Grand Central. The city orbits around 8 million centers of the universe and turns around the golden clock at the still point of this place. Lift up your eyes from the moving hive, and you will see time circling under a vault of stars and know just when and where you are.
I think everyone has a poem waiting for them. My little brother, one of my biggest inspirations for my poetry, is a reader. He has devoured fantasy, adventure, anything with epic battles where the hero inevitably wins and saves the day. You would never find him reading a book of Byron. But that does not mean he is not a lover of poetry. A few years ago, I introduced him to the classic poem Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley, a short poem filled with time and pharaohs and stretching horizons. He loved it. Now, maybe this will be the only poem he ever enjoys. I hope not, but it could be. But that is not the important thing. There is a poem he connects to that is part of him. My point is that inside everyone there is a space for poetry. And everyone you know has a poem waiting for them. Up until National Poetry Day of this year, I was the Young Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent Poet Laureate. I, with the help of my local bus company First Bus, managed to get local young people's poetry on a bus route. I think it's my job, and the job of every avid poetry fan, to get the disinterested to find their favourite poem. Because I think it's fair to say that there are a lot of people who are quick to state that they don't like poetry. They associate it with stuffy stanzas crammed with archaic vocab or wordy nonsense. And I suppose there are some poems with all of those things. There is poetry that can distance people, and there are poems that make poetry seem like a far-off, grandiose thing that no one normal or ordinary could possibly understand. But I'm pretty normal, and I'm obsessed with the stuff. I want you to imagine a wedding, or a funeral, any big ceremony that means something huge in someone's life, and see a speaker, a family member or a friend, and see how they stand up and read a poem. And then people listen, and they listen because they feel that is the place for poetry. Poetry is important at the big stages in your life. It is used to put into words the high emotions that people feel. But it is also needed in our average, boring, dull every day. In our school PE lesson, this is from a poem by Wendy Cope. When we picked teams for outdoor games, she and I were always the last two left standing by the wire mesh fence, from Titch Miller. Or when you're out in the country, this is from Blackberry Picking by the wonderful, muddy Irish poet, the great Seamus Heaney. Then red ones inked up, and that hunger sent us out with milk cans, pea tins, jam pots. And it is also when you're out shopping. The Fat Black Woman Goes Shopping by Grace Nichols perfectly captures what so many of us feel when we go out to buy a pair of jeans. It is in the mundane that often we find the truth. The use of poetry at these huge ceremonies makes many feel as if it is a medium only for the big issues, for the special occasions. And we have to be careful not to make poetry a chore. For example, the English and Welsh GCSE poetry exam that students usually take at the age of 16 has recently changed. Now, we are forced to memorise 15 poems, quotation from 15 poems, and for some students, this may be enjoyable, but for the majority, what a chore. It takes away the enjoyment, and most importantly, it takes away the free choice. And I think that's terrible, because for me anyway, poetry's main objective is to communicate. My first favourite poem, when I was very little, was Dog by Ted Hughes. It isn't a poem that addresses the problems of the world, and it isn't a poem that makes you cry. It is a poem, as the title suggests, about a dog. And why did I love it and connect to it so much? Because it reminded me of my dog. Because when I say communicate, I don't mean preach. I mean that someone could read a little snapshot of something, a relationship or a friendship. Valentine by Caroline Duffy about perfect, authentic love. I give you an onion. Or a wait for a phone call. Come on, damn you, ring me. Or a primary school class. The scent of a pencil slowly, carefully shaved. That's why I decided to get poetry on the buses. Because poetry provides empathy, and in a world that can be so cruel and hateful and sad, don't we all need a little more empathy? Buses aren't glittering or spectacular. They don't have the wow factor. But they're useful and I think important too. But I didn't want to get any type of poetry on the buses. I wanted young people's poetry, local young people's poetry. So, with the help of my fantastic school, I managed to organise a county-wide competition called the Young Staffordshire Stanza. And the 15 finalists from that competition have their poetry on the number 18 bus. This is a quote from a poem by a competition finalist called A Grey Day. Because poetry not only provides empathy, but a sense of belonging, a sense of community. And beautiful things written by local teenagers makes people proud of their area, but also proud of the people in their area. It's just one bus route, in just one place. But it's not there to make an explosion. It's there so maybe, just maybe, a person who has said they hate poetry could stop and think, well, I quite like that. Maybe because of that, that person could continue to read poetry, all sorts of different poets and styles and eras, and love every single one of them. Maybe not. Maybe I've just made someone's bus journey a little more interesting. But that's pretty good too. Thank you.
The longest relationship I've ever been in has been with the public transportation system. I ride the bus. I ride and die for the bus. Hasn't there always been a bus ready to pick me up and drop me off somewhere kind of close to the vicinity of where I was trying to go? Oh, city bus, you taught me to love walking. I give thanks for Google Maps. For each wrong bus I entered and each time I exited too early, you keep me humble. I do not, in fact, always know where I am going. Oh, bus stop 2 blocks from my current apartment, how your buses pass me most mornings as I run through crosswalks with toast in my mouth, trying to reach you in time. I will wave my lunchbox 1,000 times to get your attention if it means you'll come closer. Do not trust anyone who thinks they're too good to run for the bus. We are not perfect. I know this because you don't always show up when you're supposed to, or at all. Your mantra is, they'll wait. My tardy, good-hearted shepherd, You take my quarters and you take me anywhere, almost anywhere. Thank you to every black bus driver who got me home safe. Thank you to every brown bus driver who got me home safe. When we protested police brutality in Austin, it was enough to see your hands wave, the pride on your faces. Oh, million elders in uniform transporting the people safely. Automobile of the movement, indestructible justice machine. I've never seen a bus get in an accident. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, I just think they might be indestructible. I want every college student I meet to be more considerate, to take your backpacks off and move all the way to the back. You can always tell who's new or uncomfortable, but the bus will pick anyone up. Oh, smelly harbor of funk. Oh, strange, stained bus seat. I did not see you till I sat in you. My mistake. We are all too close for comfort here. But I trust you more than any other mass transit system. I've never felt more like a Southerner when trying to take a train to New York. I ended up on the wrong train in the middle of New Jersey. Those are different places. Thank you to every bus driver who's given me directions, who remembered my face on a familiar route, who saw in me a daughter, who let me write this poem in the ride home in the rain.